It just got real, as there's been a ton of reports, a ton of speculation surrounding the Jays targeting one specific starting pitcher, and Jon Heyman just came out today, dropped a bombshell of a report surrounding a pitcher that the Jays are targeting and are favorites for at this point, and this player is extremely interesting. We're going to break down exactly who that is and discuss what this means going forward as more and more reports start to come out surrounding the Jays. Stay tuned for all that in this episode, but before we get into it, if you're a part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, this is the place to be for daily Jays content, ladies and gentlemen. So make sure to smash that subscribe button. And thank you guys again for your continued support as we're on the road to 16,000 subscribers. Your guys' support's been unbelievable. It means the world to myself, and thank you guys once again if you're enjoying the daily content. But I had a video earlier today on a bit of a wild situation and how the Jays free agency rumor mill, report mill keeps getting crazier and crazier. But now we're going to be discussing none other than Max Scherzer. Now, we've discussed him on the channel a few days ago, I believe last week at some point. And it was, there's been linkages to him. There's been links, reporters, all these different things. But Jon Heyman, a very notable reporter, as we all know, very reliable now, came out and dropped a bit of a bombshell. So they asked about Max Scherzer, and Jon Heyman discusses why Toronto could be an ideal destination for the right-hander. Not only did he say why he'd be an ideal destination, and we're going to dive into the rotation and all these different things. There's a lot of, I guess, funny reports here. He says, and we'll dive into his stats, but he says that the Jays are the most likely destination for Max Scherzer. Future Hall of Fame pitcher Max Scherzer is biding his time in free agency, waiting for teams like the Jays to make moves that cement them as a contender. Now, he came out, and this is the exact quote for you all. Heyman revealed that Scherzer recently had a Zoom meeting with Toronto and that he was his typical frank self when outlining what it would take for him to go there. I think he basically told him, look, I want to win. You guys won 74 games last year. Let's see what the roster is before I decide what I want to do. I don't think it's millions that are going to decide what he wants to do. He wants to go to a winner. They signed Alonso. That's a pretty good middle of the order. I think they underachieved the 74 wins anyway, and they certainly are a contender. So I think Toronto is probably the most likely team for Scherzer at this point. So a few different things here. Now, one is the aspect of a possibility of signing Scherzer and Pete Alonso, which we're going to cover in a future video because there's a lot of different reports and things circulating surrounding Alonso himself. And if you can package him with Scherzer, boy, oh boy, are you set for a good team. But I want to focus on the first part of this where it says, I want to win. For one, it is now confirmed that, from Jon Heyman, that Scherzer has had a Zoom meeting with Scherzer has had a Zoom meeting with Toronto, which is already a huge step, especially at this point in free agency where a lot of the free agents have already signed. All signs point to the Jays signing Max Scherzer at this point. Now, on the other side of things, when you're thinking about what this means for the team, if they can get Max Scherzer, I absolutely love the signing. I said this a few days ago, and the fact that he had a Zoom meeting with Toronto, he wants to, it seems like he wants to be there. And there's some people that take it back, sign the man. It would fit this team so well. This starting rotation would be an X factor for this team. Kevin Gosse, Max Scherzer, Chris Bassett, José Berríos, Bowden Francis, one of the rotations of all time. Not one of the best, just one of the most interesting rotations of all time. And Max Scherzer's 40 years old, but his grit that he brings to the mound, I mean, this would be one of the most gritty, I guess, if I want to use that word, the most gritty rotations ever. You have Kevin Gausman, who has a ton of grit, and I'm using that word because this rotation would battle each and every night. You think about Chris Bassett, the intensity on the mound from Chris Bassett, Max Scherzer, José Berríos, Bowden Francis, Kevin Gausman. Sign me up tenfold. Now, if it means bringing in Pete Alonso, which again we'll cover in future, sure, bring him in. Again, anyone else feel like Heyman is implying that Boras may be pitching Scherzer and Alonso? That is possible. It's very interesting. And again, Jon Heyman is a Scott Boras guy. So Scott Boras is kind of feeding some, information, some intel to Jon Heyman. And it is very interesting here, ladies and gentlemen. As you look at his stats, if you're unfamiliar with Max Scherzer, at least we're all familiar with how good he was in Washington and Detroit. But when you look at his stats now from over the past few seasons, he signed that 3-year, $130 million deal a few years ago with the Mets. They're still under contract with that. But with the Rangers last year, 9 games, a 3.95 ERA would be perfect for the Jays if he can do that. The year before, 3.2 ERA in 8 games. His durability has been a problem. If he thinks he's healthy, and the Jays, you think about who else the Jays have when it comes to starting pitchers. We know they want starting pitchers. We know in the press conference yesterday, they came out and said they are very open to getting a starting pitcher. However, stuck in all of this is the top-level starting pitchers are mostly gone. Sasaki, Corbin Burns, all those guys. But if you sign Max Scherzer, maybe 1 year, $18 million, 1 year, $20 million, you are now opening yourself up to the potential of, and I'm not going to say an ace because he's 40 years old, but a possibly an extremely high ceiling pitcher, like higher than a lot of the other guys besides maybe Jack Flaherty, who I'm not entirely sure Toronto wants to go after him and vice versa. So, if Jack Flaherty doesn't want to come to Toronto, you have Max Scherzer, who they've had Zoom calls with. You get this rotation. You have veteran leadership to even help the young guys, whether that be Jake Bloss coming up, whether that be Alek Manoah. Bowden Francis, of course, as well, had a great season. I would just love to sign him, whether or not they get Pete Alonso, which is a conversation for another day. Sign me up for Max Scherzer. Sign me up. It makes all the sense in the world. They've had a Zoom meeting with him, and it doesn't think it's going to be the million. So maybe the Jays get him at 1 year, 15. I think he might be, might get a little bit more than that, but he wants to go to a winner. So the Jays need to, there's pressure on the Jays to make other moves in order to sign Max Scherzer. And maybe Max Scherzer saying, hey, if you guys don't get some more bats, it doesn't have to be Pete Alonso, whether that be Jerkson Profar, who I know a lot of you guys are pretty low on. I see it down below in the comment section. I kind of agree with you. It's a bit more of a risky play, but a high ceiling play. Whether that be Profar, whether it be Alonso, whether that be making a trade for somebody. I mean, Dylan Cease obviously would be another starting pitcher that they could make a trade for with, of course, the Padres. I mean, the Fernando Tatis stuff. Whether or not they make a huge splash will dictate whether or not players like Max Scherzer will want to come to Toronto. He's 40 years old. He's not trying to compete for a wild card spot. He's trying to win the World Series. And the fact that he had a Zoom call with Toronto, I mean, he thinks that the Jays can at least make a push, and especially with this new roster, make a push for the World Series. Now, I'm not even going to remotely step there. You have to win a playoff game. This Coors, you have to win a playoff game. But at least from the perspective of outsiders and Max Scherzer in this case, things could be very interesting. And let me know down below, is this a move you'd be willing to do? Is this a move you think the Jays should do? And most importantly, would you want to see Max Scherzer in a Toronto Blue Jays uniform? Because I see this, you think about this rotation, you think about his energy, his intensity at Rogers Center with this new look team. You got Anthony Santander, Andres Gimenez, you make a couple more additions. You look at the lineup now. If you clean up that third base / center field spot, of course, this is with Varsho out due to his shoulder injury, and maybe you even add another DH. Again, you replace Will Wagner with Pete Alonso. Maybe you throw Will Wagner there at third base. Again, I don't know. He's not a great fielder. He definitely can't play really a third base consistently at all. His arm is pretty weak for second base, let alone third. But if you move things around, you get a Bregman, you get a Yoan Moncada, who is not a great player, but would be a buy low, potential higher upside guy. This team could start to compete. And I like the way the lineup is starting to look, especially 1 through 5, really 1 through 4. And if they start to, I think they probably replace Alejandro Kirk and Will Wagner here. Obviously, you want to get, a left-right flow going, and that's obviously why they have Will Wagner there at 5. And, I mean, Santander's a switch hitter, which a lot of us, sometimes people forget. He's going to be hitting left most of the time. Give me Max Scherzer, sign me up, and things are really getting real for this. Not only were the rumors starting to pick up over the past couple weeks, but now John Heyman, who is a Scott Boras guy, comes out and says this. Clearly, leverage is being played here, and there's not many teams in on Max Scherzer that we're aware of. So, if that's the case, ladies and gentlemen, buckle up. It's going to be an interesting next few days because February 18th is approaching. The Jays need to get Vladimir Guerrero Jr.'s extension done, but a lot of the free agents now are going to be pressed to sign, whether that be Pete Alonso, Max Scherzer, Jack Flaherty, all these different guys. Carlos Estevez in the bullpen. The Jays still have a bit of work to do there. They need a lefty. Brandon Eisert was a lefty that they had, was DFA'd to make room for Anthony Santander. So a ton of things are going down. We're going to keep you up to date with all the latest news. So make sure to smash that subscribe button. Thank you guys for watching. Cheers.